Have you ever wondered why the US dollar is the king of currencies? Every time you travel abroad, you convert your rupee to dollars. Why? How is it you can buy anything in any country if you have dollars? Why does almost every country, including India, only trade in dollars? Why can't we buy and sell anything in most countries with the Indian rupee? Well, because for the last 10 years or so, India has been importing far more than it has been exporting. This means that other countries don't have much of a reason to have the Indian rupee in their bag. In 2022, India had tried to push for the rupee to become a globally traded currency by setting up special Vostro rupee accounts by authorized Indian banks and their corresponding banks in partner countries for settling payments in rupees. India would need to become a much larger economy to catch the attention of other nations. But wait, while the rupee still has some catching up to do to become a global currency, we've got another ace up our sleeve. Earlier this year at the BRICS foreign ministers meet, there was a discussion on the need for currencies that can challenge the US dollar supremacy. The solution that they came up with? Build an alternative currency system, the R5 currency. Now let's see how the dollar became the global currency after World War II and what exactly is R5. In the early 1900s, countries valued their currency based on the gold reserves they had. When the World War broke out, the US became a safe haven for allied nations to store their gold, and it's also the main supplier of goods and weapons during the war. By the end of the war, the US held a majority of the world's gold. Now this meant nobody else really had much gold left. So in 1944, the representatives from 44 countries signed the Bretton Woods Agreement and agreed that the dollar would be pegged to the gold value and every other currency would be valued against the dollar. The system was put in place to minimize foreign exchange volatility and facilitate international trade and their sanction of loans and grants. So instead of gold reserves, countries started building up US dollar reserves, making it the global reserve currency. This set the US dollar in the driver's seat and made it the most powerful currency globally. However, it wasn't long before there was trouble in paradise. The United States had the responsibility of keeping the price of gold fixed and had to adjust the supply of dollars to maintain confidence in gold convertibility. The Bretton Woods system was in place until the US balance of payments deficits led to foreign held dollars, exceeding the US gold stock, implying that the United States could not fulfill its obligation to redeem dollars for gold at the official price. In 1971, President Richard Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility to gold and moved the world into an era of fiat money. But by then, countries had accumulated so much of the US dollar and trade settlement systems had already started revolving around the currency. It still remained the most stable and liquid form of exchange. The dollar continued to be used widely, but then alarm bells started going off each time the US took on more debt or faced inflationary pressure. But things got worse in January of 2023 when the US hit its debt ceiling of $31.4 trillion, along with an increase on its current account balance of payments. In short, the US is struggling to repay its debt. And since roughly 60% of the world's foreign reserves are in US dollars, a default by the US would erode the value of the currency with severe geopolitical consequences. The realization that countries were over-dependent on one currency had become blatantly obvious, one in which the global confidence has started to become shaky. With countries holding their foreign currency reserves predominantly in dollars, the US used this to dictate their foreign policy. In 2022, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the Russian central bank was slammed with financial sanctions. Russia has so far ridden out the turbulence. However, it did so by closing its financial system to the outside world. Its imports have been reduced to barely more than half their pre-crisis level. When the sanctions were applied, the shock to Russia provoked the question of whether a monetary system that provides such a one-sided power could possibly be sustainable. Also, given that any fluctuations in the dollar exchange rates means a direct impact to the country's inflation, interest rates, trade deficits, and GDP. This made Russia, China and India look for an alternate system. This brings us to the retaliation. Brazil, Russia, India and China, or the BRIC nations, are considered developing countries with rising economic power. The acronym was later changed to BRICS when South Africa joined the bloc. BRICS has now become a cohesive economic and geopolitical intergovernmental bloc that has been in talks to use alternative trade currencies. One approach taken by these countries has been to settle their trades in their local currencies. This would allow exporters and importers to balance risks, have more options to invest in, and certainty about the revenues and sales. The other bolder approach has been to build an alternative currency system, the R5 currency. The R5 currency is an approach by the BRICS nations to create a new reserve currency based on a basket of their existing currencies. The name for the new currency, R5, is based on the first letters of the BRICS currencies, all of which coincidentally begin with the letter R. That's a happy coincidence. The initial discussions surrounding R5 were mostly revolving around the creation of a full-fledged euro-like currency backed by gold for international transactions. So what does this mean for the BRICS currency? As of now, the BRICS reserve currency will not be created to replace the national reserve currencies of the BRICS economies. It will only be used to complement these national currencies and probably improve the chances for more emerging market currencies to attain reserve status. Initially, the new BRICS currency could perform the role of an accounting unit to facilitate transactions in the national currencies. In the longer run, the currency could start to perform the role of settlements, payments, as well as the store of value reserves for the central banks of the emerging market economies. So rather than creating a physical unit that services international transactions, a phased approach starting with the creation of an accounting unit that allows tracking volatility, minimizing risks, and retaining a lot of benefits associated with the common currency may be the way forward in the near term. So in short, the R5 would be for BRICS countries, what the euro is for the European Union nations. The benefit, other than of course the de-dollarisation, would be the chance to improve the credibility and global reach of developing nations. The emergence of additional reserve currencies from among the emerging market economies will diversify reserve holdings and reduce the risk of depending on only a few currencies. In the end, the launching of a new reserve currency, if successful, will have a transformational effect on the international financial system, and the R5 project can thus become one of the most important contributions of the emerging markets to the global system. In the long term, if it advances to a stage of a reserve currency, the R5 could contribute to a more balanced global monetary system and compete for the greater prominence alongside the US dollar and other leading reserve currencies. Regardless of the direction the R5 currency takes, it's clear that the BRICS nations are rising in power and have clear intentions of de-dollarisation. In fact, the bloc is only getting stronger, with a historic expansion as the emerging nations of Saudi Arabia, Iran, Ethiopia, Egypt, Argentina, and the UAE officially joining the bloc on 1st January 2024. Yes, the transition will be hard, as the current trade infrastructure and global forex reserves are dominated by the dollar. There's been a fair amount of skepticism, with many debating the creation, risks, and fragilities the proposed R5 currency could pose, as there are too many unanswered questions. 1. How will the nations ensure that the currency will be able to exercise the functions of a unit of account, a store of value, and the means of payment? 2. Who would be responsible for issuing the R5 and putting it into circulation? 3. Should the R5 have a physical existence, or will it be only digital? 4. Would it be necessary to create a BRICS central bank and unify monetary policy? 5. Would the R5 inspire confidence? These are only a few technicalities in regards to the currency itself. There are also concerns on the economic and geopolitical fronts that need to be addressed. For example, what will take precedence? The rise of the global south, or the border tensions between India and China? How will the countries tackle the challenge of being in a suboptimal currency area, along with the economies being dramatically different in terms of trade, growth, and financial openness? As it stands now, there is support and criticism for the R5. What's your view? Is the new currency feasible? Can the dollar ever be replaced? We hope this video has been useful and informative. If yes, don't forget to share this with your friends and family.
Investments in security markets are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.